Hello, this is an introduction to a new series I'm going to have, and it's going to be in relation to Bible difficulties. This first one will be titled Bible Difficulties Number One, the Canaanites. And it's just a compilation of material I found, and there's much, much more. And I've thrown in my 2 cents here and there. And I think, to be honest, when it comes to these difficulties, I think at one time I heard there was several thousand. Uh, I think probably 99% of them have been explained away. And the part that I'm going to deal with is about the 20 major discrepancies people claim that are in the Bible. And I think honesty is very important from the Christian viewpoint. Uh, when you find a problem in the Bible, I believe that we have to be frank and acknowledge it. Running from it and trying to disguise it is not going to help anyone. And the point is, we have to face it square on. And the Canaanites and the killing of all those people, men, women, and children, is probably one of the most talked about and used examples of the loving God being evil. And I think if you would read through the entire history of the Canaanites and through Deuteronomy and the laws that God has put down, you should be able to surmise what I'm going to say here. And most likely, all the information that I'm going to give you from the atheist viewpoint, uh, I'm not going to kid myself. Uh, at the end of all this uh, explanation, they're probably not going to agree with this. And that's okay. We all have our choice. But sometimes the Illuminati uh, doesn't want to face the truth. They claim they know the truth, but here's some stuff I put together. In Deuteronomy 20, 16, 17, there was the command. It sounded appalling on the surface to kill that many people, including children. And the one thing we have to understand about the Canaanites is who they were. And I want to try to give some examples from the Bible and other sources. I think Josephus, and there was another fella, I can't even pronounce his name. We'll get to it. It's Alexander something or other, uh, who was a historian. And they were a very evil race of people. They were like a moral cancer. And about the only way I know if you can deal with cancer is you cut it out. And you may not like that analogy, but it was a cancer. And after I give you some highlights of what they did, you'll have to agree that they were very bad. You may not like the results or how the Lord handled it, but the one thing we have to remember, God's the creator. He can do any darn thing he wants. Just because we don't like it or we judge it through our filters of being human. I mean, we're a finite group. He's infinite. Uh, I don't see how we can always try to think we can figure him out. And one of the biggest problems about the whole thing is the children. And I'm going to follow up on that in a moment. But first, I want to lay the groundwork that sin, as viewed from God, is not taken very lightly. It's an insurmountable difficulty that we cannot approach. And uh, the new atheists, they would like to refer to God as committing genocide. But he did not wipe out the entire nation. And it was actually not genocide. I would say it was more of a capital punishment because they were warned. They knew the commandments and the through Deuteronomy, all the laws that were laid down that they could read. And in Leviticus 18, God warns Israel that if they commit similar sins, that the land would similarly vomit them out. So he was being even-handed, and as you can see and know from history, the Jews are still paying a price. And Richard Dawkins likes to bring up the Canaanite, and he calls it divine ethnic cleansing. What would you expect from him? Okay, some of the reasons that are behind this that would give some support is the comment that it was genocide. Well, it was not genocide because the tribes such as the Hittites, they greatly exceeded their boundaries, and there were other groups that were not given capital punishment that were part of the Canaanites and related to that group. And most of the punishment, however, was sought to reveal the standards and to give an example of what God expected, that there is retribution, there is capital punishment. And part of the issues that were with the Canaanites, I will list here, and I'm not going to go into great detail just to be gory, but they were idolaters, they worshiped other gods, and they actually made fun of Yahweh. And they said and did some very vulgar things that I'm not going to mention. You can Google it. Incest was another thing. And adultery, child sacrifice, homosexuality, bestiality. And the most important thing that people have a hard time grasping is the children. And I just want to read you what was in store for these children. Molech was a Canaanite underworld deity, represented as an upright, bull-headed idol with a human body in whose belly a fire was stoked and in whose outstretched arms a child was placed that would be burned to death. The victims were not only infants, and children as old as 4 years old were sacrificed. This is the other historian, Alexander Kletoros, reported as the flame was burning the child's body, the limbs would shrivel up and the mouth would appear to grin as if laughing until it was shrunk enough to slip into the cauldron. That's what was in store for them children. Couldn't they be spared? The extermination of the Canaanite children was not only an act of mercy and love to the world at large, it was also an act of love and mercy to the children themselves. What awaited these children if they were allowed to live was something vastly worse than death. And you can see what was in store for the children. You still may call it cruel, But if you look at the big picture, would living to be 20, 30, 40 years old in that lifestyle, I would call that horrendous. As a child, that mercy was extended to them in death, that they could go where there was no more suffering. And as an atheist, you probably can't understand that. But that's the claim that the Bible makes, that Christ makes, and that I will reiterate, that there is salvation and hope for those who claim Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. And just as in when Abraham, when he went to Sodom, and God was going to torch Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham says, okay, oh, don't do that. My family's there. This is his brother or something. And he says, just let me find 50 people out of both these cities. And will you spare him? Okay. He went in, he couldn't find 50. And he come back. So he's negotiating. He picked another number. I don't know how it went. I think it was 10 or something. He went back, he couldn't find 10. And the lesson of the story is God has a very stringent outlook on sin. And in the Old Testament, he showed how he would issue his capital punishment. So that's just what I have. And I think for me, I spent quite a few hours looking into this, and it really helped clear up my difficulties because I didn't like that either. There's things in the Bible I don't like. And that was one of them. And I got tired of hearing it, and I thought, well, let me check it out. And when you look at the big picture and what if not only did they get capital punishment for disobeying, those children, that was an act of grace. And you may not like it. I'm telling you, I think if it was my child, I would have rather seen them be sent up to sit next to the King of Kings than to spend a lifetime in that lifestyle. So you can think what you want, and hopefully my next 19 or so of these are going to be much abbreviated. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea where I'm going and what I'm doing. And if you don't like what I said, make a comment. I mean, you know, we all have our different outlooks on life and who we follow and the reasons we do what we do. And I just gave you a few reasons of why God did what he did. Thanks for your time, and sorry this went so long.